McFarlane, what are you doing here? You know how to make better figures than this. These are 1/18 scale $20 figures that lack full modern articulation. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, today we are looking at McFarlane's latest action figure line, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. There are 4 figures consisting of Helm Hammerhand, Hera, Princess of Rohan, Wolf, and Shank. The backside of the packages is simply a guide to assemble the Snow Troll Build-A-Figure. I think all of us collectors ask the question, is it worth it at some point when buying action figures? I know I do, and I have 3 primary criteria: articulation, design, and cost. There are other criteria that we all might have, but those are rather personal to us, and so I can't talk to those. That's why I review what I can. So with that said, let's jump in and start discussing articulation. Each figure has the exact same points of articulation. There are 8 of them. You have a rotation here at the head, no ball joint, a rotation at the waist, again no ball joint, each arm rotates around at the shoulder, the legs will rotate or lift up at the waist, and the knees have a hinge so that if you want the character to kneel or something like that, you can get almost 90 degrees, 88 to 90 degrees, I would say, from this figure. Now, I'm not a fan of this level of limited articulation in action figures. I know that some of you are, and that design is more important than articulation. That's why it's time to look at design. We'll begin with Fantasy Santa here, because Hammerhand is just too big of a word for me to say too many times. So we take a look a little bit closer. You can see the detail here in his hair. There's a lot of nice curling going on back here. He's got a lovely red fabric cape. That's kind of cool. It's actually a nice feel. It's kind of a little bit of a stretchy, see-through-ish material, if in person it is. You can see his armor is very kind of intricate with all this design and this crosswork here. He's a pretty heavy feeling figure. Now, all of these figures, left hand, is in the shape of a fist, so you can't put any accessories whatsoever inside of this hand. The only hand that you can put an accessory in is the right hand. It has an open C-shaped style hand that you can see right there. And that's the only thing you can put accessories in. So bear that in mind. Now, of course, he's more like Odin here, or maybe old Thor. He's holding up his hammer. But overall, design-wise, I don't think this figure looks that bad at all. He looks actually really cool, kind of nice, and that's why I want more articulation on these figures, because I think they'd be really awesome that way. Next, we have Hera and, well, her bendy sword. Guess you're going to have to put some heat on this if yours comes out bendy. Now, she's got an interesting design. The colors, when she bends her knees, they actually look pretty good. There's a reason I point that out, and some other figures I'll be mentioning. Be careful about bending her over with the knees, because she gets into this weird little pose that just looks a little unbecoming of her. She's got this really nice blue cape, the exact same material as the other capes. I actually like this one a whole lot, just it's blue. She's got some nice curly, textured red hair through there. It's a very nice looking figure. Again, the design I think is pretty cool. It's got some design on the boots that are painted on there. I like the look of it. I think these look pretty cool. They're definitely a very cartoony look, but the movie they're from is a cartoon. I'm not saying it's for kids. I actually don't know a whole lot about it, but they have a cartoony look, which I think matches the style of the movie quite well. Next, we come to dark, brooding-looking Wolf, and I'll be honest, this figure is a little bit difficult to stand. The legs kind of go out. You can't bring them together, and I don't know if it's a heat thing, like maybe they got bent up in the package, but as you can see, they both kind of go their own separate way. When you bend his knees, well, they're a bit of an odd. You see right there, you've got this point out there, so the inner working of the upper leg points out, and you can even see the ratcheting system very well on that joint, and it looks just kind of ugly. Not only that, and I don't expect that you'll see this very well, so you'll have to trust me on this. On his legs, the lower legs, you have this L and R. You have an external left and right designation when you bend these knees. So if you see that, and they all have that, if you see that, that could be a little bit annoying. But then again, I'm not really sure when you're going to bend these knees all that much, unless you need them in some sort of a knee bent pose in which they can't stand. They've got no holes in the feet, so you can't find any kind of a figure stand that's going to help stand them up. I would say of all the characters, this is the most detailed. I'm going to bring him just a little bit closer and check out all these gold buckles, these little golden bronze circles for the belt to hook into. There's texturing all around the fur of his cape and his hair. Check out this. Yeah, he's very detailed. He's really nice. Again, that articulation for me. When you hold out his hand, besides the fact he also has a bit of a bendy sword, he holds his arms kind of funny. If you can see, they're kind of like bent in a little bit. So let's rotate that sword the way it should be. So if you want to get him into some sort of a pose, this is kind of what you're looking at. Or maybe something like this. Either way, his posing, I would say, not that great. It's a cool looking figure, but wrist articulation would have helped this quite a bit. Did I mention he has like a dark brown cape? This is also same material. Pretty cool. Yeah, I like this figure. More articulation, and I will quit saying that because that's a personal preference. And then we have Shank, and this one you definitely will be bending the knees for to get him to stand and pose properly. Again, he has some very pronounced knee points right there, so they're very sharp. Be careful. So anytime you bend the knees, either of them, let's get his axe out of the way, you'll see these little points sticking out. As I said, they are parts of the upper leg, the knee joint, and they look a little bit ugly. He's got this big axe, which he holds onto with his right hand, because all of them only have the ability to hold an accessory in the right hand, and I didn't actually talk about the accessories all that much. He's probably the most simplistic in design of all of them. He's got a lot of skin, he's got some upper chest armor, he's got a helmet covering his head, we'll pick that up later, and then he's got a bit of a loincloth surrounding his waist and belt, and it's made of that same material, and it's a kind of a dark green. There's really nothing under it, if you really must know. It's just that skin color, so I'm kind of surprised there's not even like painted underwear, so to speak. He got some black boots and some brown shin guards, and he's got a left arm guard, but that's really about it. He's really basic of all of them. And there's one more figure to talk about, and that's the Snow Troll. This is the Build-A-Figure, so you have to buy all 4 figures in order to get all the pieces to put this figure together. So let's put this figure together real quick, and then we'll talk about him. And here we have our big beloved creature, the Snow Troll. With the Snow Troll built, let's take a look at the articulation. So first off, with the legs don't move around at all, but when you look at the waist piece, it looks like they should actually move, but there is no articulation or movement from the legs whatsoever. The arms rotate at the shoulders, and they even have a slight hinge to go up and down. The head rotates on a ball joint back and forth, and the waist even moves just very slightly. You got to force it a little bit. That's it. That's all the articulation you get. I would classify that as 6 points of articulation. But now let's jump into the design. The design of this thing is really cool, and if you're wanting this just to sit on your shelf in the middle of a fantasy display, this could be the thing you're looking for. The figure has a lot of texture on the body. There's even some scales on the wrist and the thigh area, the upper leg area. It's kind of cool, and you even have a bit of a white paint to kind of highlight those scales as well. He's got a soft rubber beard. It's not furry or hairy, but it's more of a soft, pliable. The horns are a little bit softer at the tips while they're stiffer near the head. And he's wearing a green loincloth, and the cloth is plastic, or it's rubber, and it's a rough, soft, pliable rubber, so it looks cool. The design of this is really cool. He is a very grumpy looking Snow Troll. Over here on his left shoulder, he's got some brown armor that's also a soft, pliable piece of plastic. Oh yeah, and around his wrists, you can see there is a piece of chain hanging down off of both of them right there. So he's either just broken out of some prison or someone has helped him break out. Either way, this guy is on the loose and he's looking for trouble. So let's say this line is ticking all the boxes for you and you're really interested and you really want these figures. How much are they going to cost you? Well, each of these 1/18 scale action figures with one accessory, limited articulation, is going to be $20 each. That's right, I said it, $20 each. However, they don't just come with a figure and accessory, they also come with a Build-A-Figure part for the Snow Troll. So if that's the case and you want all the figures, then you get 5 figures for $80, making them about $16 a piece, which I would say makes that a little bit better. Now, one thing to be careful about is Amazon is selling a 4-pack of these 4 figures. There is no Build-A-Figure Snow Troll as part of it. So for $60, you'll get 4 figures and their 4 accessories, no Build-A-Figure. Of course, each figure is then only about $15 each if you don't care about the Snow Troll right there. So if I was buying these just for me and not to make a video to show all of you the ins and outs of these things, I probably wouldn't buy them. However, the Snow Troll has been almost convincing me because I really do like him. I just wish he had a little bit more articulation. Typically a large figure like this has kind of limited articulation even if he has all the correct points. So it's almost a pass for me, and I really like this guy. I just think this guy looks really cool. If I was just going to put these on a shelf to display them, then yeah, this would probably be a win because they all look really good. They actually do look really good. But I actually like to do things such as posing and playing around with them, and so these don't really work, especially with a fist left hand. You can't put just any accessory in either hand. You could put probably something in the right hand, but there's also no wrist articulation, and I need that wrist articulation so I can maneuver the accessories in whichever way I want to. If these figures had elbow articulation, then I would probably be going towards the I'm more interested in these figures, but for some reason that elbow articulation just really adds something. One thing, though, that does factor into my consideration if these are worth it is the fact that McFarlane has put out a 4-inch figure, highly articulated figure, in the past at $20. And this figure is from Avatar, and at the time I thought, even though it's a little bit rough, this figure is absolutely amazing. He's got butterfly joints in there, bicep rotation, double pin elbow, double pin knee, torso cut, a waist. This figure is like a multiverse figure downsized. In fact, I'm pretty sure that McFarlane used the large versions, the ones he already had, for this figure because these are some pretty large joints here. But this really is, I thought, a pretty amazing figure, even though it's still a little bit rough. Like sometimes the hands will just fall off and the joints are very stiff and they really crick over the ratcheting system. But this is actually a pretty amazing figure. If all of these figures were just like this one, no brainer, these are all totally worth it. But because McFarlane has put out a good 4-inch 1/18 scale figure in the past, and it worked really well, that's what makes it really difficult for me to think that these are that awesome of a buy. Although, actually, look how tall Miles is. If I put him in the middle without knocking everybody down, you can kind of see how tall he is. He's almost the height of Fantasy Santa over here, but he's definitely higher than Wolf and definitely larger than Hera. So now let's do some size comparisons. So we'll begin with Hera, and as you can see, there is a huge variety of female figures out there. We have a modern era Agent Helix G.I. Joe figure, a League of Legends Spin Master Caitlyn, a Bo-Katan from Star Wars, the Vintage Collection, I think Vintage Style, I don't quite remember. We have Jane from Boss Fight Studios Tarzan line, and Jules from Fortnite. So as you can see, she actually doesn't really match up with anybody here. I thought she was going to be more like Bo-Katan, but she's actually taller. So she's like a giant to Bo-Katan. Otherwise, she's kind of shrimpy to all the rest of them, and I actually hadn't realized how tall Caitlyn was. I haven't pulled this figure out in a while. So, wow, what an interesting variety of sizes here for the females. And here we have the men. As you can see, there's quite the variety. We have Fortnite right there, Halo Marine, Tarzan from Boss Fight Studios, Spider-Man from the Marvel Universe series, Dime Novel Legends from Chicken Fried Toys. We got Eagle Force. I'm going to call Larry Hum Eagle Force Fresh Monkey Fiction. And then we have Mandalorian from that Star Wars vintage style. As you can see, they're all pretty comparable in height, except for Shank over here, who's a goblin of sorts, and he's a little bit shorter, but really and truly, they match up with these guys really pretty well. It kind of makes me curious about Hera. How in the world did she get undersized? That's just really weird to me. And I didn't do any height comparison with the Snow Troll because he's bigger, and you can see how much bigger he is with these figures, so you know how much bigger he is with those other figures. However, there's one more figure I'd like to bring in, and that is Altered Beast, because, Beast Fantasy, I think it all works really well. And it's kind of cool to see how tall this one is compared to everyone else, because he's definitely taller than the standard figures, and he's just a little bit shy of the Snow Troll, so we got almost a comparable height, but this guy's more articulated, and he is much more maneuverable, so I think he's going to win in a battle versus him. So the question remains, are these worth it? For me personally, probably not. When I've got so many other 1/18 scale figures for a lot cheaper in price, better articulation, and just as good detail on them, I would probably end up passing if I was just buying them for me. So at this point, you get to decide with everything I've shown you, are these worth it for you? I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.